I am indeed delighted to be here. Once more, let me join the Speaker in thanking the management of the National Legislative and Democratic Institute for this invitation. And to me, one of the major benefits of marking June 12 as Nigerian Democracy Day is that it stands as an immortal reminder to us all that democracy we enjoy today came at a very high cost. Some paid with their freedom, some with their resources, while some paid with their lives. And if Nigerians had traversed 7 forests and rivers to fetch this fire of democracy, then we owe it to their sacrifice, memories, and indeed posterity to nurture it with utmost care and patriotic zeal. It's against this background that I must commend the Director General of the National Institute of Legislative and Democratic Studies, Professor Abubakar Suleiman, and the entire NIH community for their thoughtfulness in putting this commemorative lecture together, and particularly for coming up with the topic, Nigeria's Democratic Experience, Reflections on Leadership Recruitment and Democratic Institution Building. Unless we get our leadership recruitment process right, we could never expect quality leadership. And in absence of strong institutions, democracy itself flounders, imperiled in the captivity of strong men. For this reason, we mounted the leadership of the 6th National Assembly in 2007, and in subsequent assemblies, we took it upon ourselves to reform the electoral system, including strengthening the critical institutions in the electoral process, namely the Independent National Electoral Commission and the political parties. Meanwhile, whereas the election management body, INEC, has really stabilized and improved greatly, the political parties have not made the expected progress. Some of our efforts at the level of legislature to improve the nation's leadership recruitment process via the electoral reforms include the financial autonomy for INEC, administrative autonomy for INEC, Section 160 of the 1999 Constitution, removal of membership of a political party as qualification for appointment into INEC, release of funds to INEC on time, early primary elections to allow time for resolving of matters arising from the primaries, while also allowing the INEC 360 days to prepare for election, barring of the INEC from rejecting all the qualifying candidates, was to remove the INEC officials as respondents in election petitions. We removed the restriction on electronic voting. We provided legal backing for smart card readers and any other voter accreditation technology that INEC may deploy. We introduced electronic transfer of results. We made provision for compulsory conduct of party primaries, substitution of candidates only in the event of death or written withdrawal by a candidate, and not at the whims and caprices of party officials. We provided for early commencement of election campaign 150 days before the election. We empowered political parties to conduct primary elections to replace the candidates who died in the course of an election. We provide for time frame for determination of pre-election matters and also time frame for determination of election petitions, stoppage of government subvention for political parties, and window for their primaries. We ended the disqualification of candidates by legislative panels and we reduced the age of qualification for political office holders. We stipulated the conditions and process for deregistration of political parties, and so on. As we are aware, the latest of these efforts was the Electoral Act of 2022. Regrettably, whereas many milestones, some of which I have already mentioned, were achieved in the Act, there is no doubt that the Electoral Act 2022 could have come out better where the process not hijacked by narrow political interests. A thorough scrutiny of the Act will show that unlike the Electoral Act of 2010, Electoral Act 2022 lacks sequence and coordination, as a lot of things were jumbled up. Furthermore, it took the intervention of some of us to make it into the Electoral Act. For instance, I have never said this, but let me say it now. I personally drafted a provision for electronic transmission of results for inclusion in the bill, because for whatever reason, it was not the original provision. It took an enormous push by some progressives among the Joint Technical Committee on the Repeal and Reenactment of the Electoral Act and the Joint National Assembly Committee on INEC, both of which I'm a member, to push such provisions through. Even after that, we have signed off on the report. There were still attempts to water it down to suit narrow and party interests. But thank God, some of us, as well as the media and CSOs, were alert. It was also the attack of the process to serve narrow group and party interests rather than national interests that resulted in the grave error of the exclusion of statutory delegates, including lawmakers themselves, from participation in the party primaries. The whole essence of their primaries was to democratize the process of nominating candidates, ensuring that all bona fide members of each political party partake in the primary election, as is the case in advanced democracies. I'd like to thank Mr. Speaker for his contribution in ensuring that that primaries will find its way and remain as part and parcel of recruiting candidates for elections. So it will be difficult for a few persons to hijack the process if we have direct primaries. Unfortunately, Mr. President vetoed that act, insisting that the delegates mode be restored. They were also later to insist on the inclusion of consensus mode of nomination. The result is the recent political fraud perpetrated across the nation and across various political parties in the Demo Party primaries. Today, not only does money play a greater role in the emergence of candidates, turning delegates to overnight millionaires because delegates are fewer. The non-participation of statutory delegates was fate playing into the hands of the governors, who colluded with greedy party leaders to manipulate the margins of 3-man ad hoc or 5-man delegates, as the case may be, and went ahead to weaponize them fully for their selfish political interests. At the end of the day, democracy and the people are at the receiving ends. And as the masses can only elect candidates thrown up by the various political parties. Ladies and gentlemen, my advice is that we need to restrict political parties to direct primaries as the only mode of nominating candidates has been advocated by Mr. Speaker. Let's see if we truly want to preserve and grow our democracy and recruit leaders that will truly serve the collective interest. A situation where you have about 5 wards that constitute House of Assembly and you have 3-man delegates. That means 15 people will be deciding who will be their candidate, who will be a member of the House of Assembly in a population of about 200,000 people. However, INEC must ensure that only political parties which made the electronic and biometric membership registration registers available to it at least 1 year to the commencement of the primary elections are allowed to nominate candidates for general election. So the point here is that if you must do their primaries, there must be verifiable register, preferably the one with the electronic mode. Now, before I conclude, let me make some few quick points. When Mr. Speaker came in here, he reminded me that he'll be 60 years this month. And there is a book that's already written to celebrate that 60 years. And yesterday, he was going through the book, and he saw an argument we had many years ago, which is the issue of violence in our legislative and public service practices. And reminded me that I said, and I still maintain that position, that there's nothing like violence in our law or in our rules. It's a fraudulent public service practice, where after making the Appropriation Act, some people will sit down in the offices and start uttering and say it's called violent. I've opposed it and still oppose it. When laws are made, there are certain practices that must be observed. It goes through first, second, and third reading. And for you to alter that law, you must go through the same process. The only thing short of it is fraudulent. So we must stop this idea of violent, because that is not fair to the public or indeed to our law. The second issue is the issue of ministers of state. There's no such provision in our constitution. A situation where a minister from a state becomes a deputy to his colleague from another state is not envisioned in our constitution, and it's not done anywhere. So the idea of ministers of state needs to stop. It is just a practice that comes from nowhere, and it's causing a lot of problems in the ministries. So we must have everything, especially the civil society. We need to help us to drive that the revision of that practice in the states, well, especially in the federal level. So it's either you're a minister or you're not a minister. So you can't have a deputy minister in the name of Minister of State. So lastly, let me also reiterate that we must take the bold step to recalibrate our security system and institutions, because we must first have a secure country before we can have a meaningful democracy and the blessing to accomplish it. Currently, Nigeria is gliding towards the slope, and we all have ourselves to blame for refusing to do right things over the years. Before now, some of us have shouted on top of our voices on the need to decentralize the police system, but to no avail. I sponsored a bill for the creation of state police in the 8th Senate, and of course in this current National Assembly, but nobody seemed to pay attention. It was voted out. Ladies and gentlemen, I regret to inform you that by my own estimation and taking lessons from other clients, our condition has become so bad that even state police can no longer save us now. We have gone from bad to worse, and today we are facing the worst security realities since the amalgamation of Southern and Northern protectorates. Terrorists, bandits, and all manners of criminal cartels have taken the nation by the jugular. We must now urgently seek the help of the international community. We need to lock down this country and deal with our security situation. Otherwise, once a few of the terrorist cartels are able to take a full control of one or more states for their respective selves, our fate will be like that of Somalia. God forbid. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me once more thank the organizers for the opportunity to add my voice to this important topic, and also thank you most profoundly for your kind attention. God bless Nigeria.